At 16, Edith was no longer thinking about dreams, no longer thinking about sports, no longer thinking about the future. After losing her mother and stepfather, she had only one thought left in her mind: how do I keep my little brother alive? The house felt different after the funeral. Too quiet, too empty. The same people who filled the compound with crying and sympathy were slowly disappearing, one by one. By the third day, the house was almost silent again. Edith sat alone in the room she once shared with her mother, staring at the wall, still unable to believe any of it was real. Meanwhile, Cobby kept asking the same question: when is Mummy coming back? Every single time he asked, something inside Edith broke again. But she couldn't cry in front of him, not anymore, because now she was all he had left. The food in the kitchen started reducing. The money left in the house became smaller each day, and slowly, fear returned. Edith began noticing something else, too. The stepfather's relatives had started visiting more often. At first, they acted caring, too caring. They spoke softly, pretended to comfort them. But Edith noticed the way they looked around the house, the whispers, the discussions, the tension. Something didn't feel right. One evening, Edith overheard a conversation outside. One of the relatives said quietly, "This house does not belong to those children." Her heart stopped. Another voice replied, "We need to settle everything quickly before things become complicated." Edith stood frozen behind the wall, listening, shaking, and for the first time since the accident, she realized something terrifying. They might lose this home too. That night, Edith couldn't sleep. The memories returned immediately. Sleeping in churches, cold nights, hunger, Cobby crying beside her. She could not allow that life to happen again. Not after everything. Not after finally escaping it. But deep down, she knew she had no power, no adult, no money, no protection, just fear. The next morning, Cobby quietly came to check on Edith, his face filled with sadness after hearing his sisters sobbing softly in the middle of the night. He asked if she was okay. Edith forced a smile. Yes, but the truth was, she was terrified. At night, when Cobby slept, Edith cried quietly into her pillow. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent tears from a girl carrying more weight than she could handle. She tried returning to school. She really tried. But everything felt heavier now. Teachers spoke, but her mind wandered. Assignments piled up. Her uniform was becoming old again. Sometimes she arrived late because she had to prepare food for Cobby first. Sometimes she skipped classes completely. And slowly, people began noticing the change in her. The stepfather's family stopped pretending. Their tone became colder, sharper. One afternoon, one of the uncles told Edith directly, "You children should start thinking about where you will go." Edith felt her chest tighten. She tried explaining, begging, but the man didn't care. To them, she and Cobby were outsiders. Days passed. The money left behind finished. Edith started skipping meals again. Sometimes she told Cobby she wasn't hungry, just so he could eat more. But at night, her stomach hurt badly. Still, she endured it silently, because hunger was easier to handle than fear. One evening, while returning from the market, a man stopped her. Older, well-dressed. He had seen her several times before. He spoke kindly, too kindly. He offered help, money, food, support. But the way he looked at her made Edith uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Then he said quietly, "You're a beautiful girl. Life doesn't have to be this hard for you." Edith understood immediately, and her heart sank. She walked away without replying, but his words stayed in her mind all night. A few days later, Kabi developed a fever. At first, Edith thought it was normal, but by night, his body became weak, very weak. He could barely eat. Edith panicked. She searched the house for money. Nothing. She checked every corner. Nothing. Then fear returned stronger than ever, because this time, it wasn't just poverty. Her little brother needed help. That night, Edith sat beside Kabi while he slept. Sweat covered his face. His breathing worried her, and for the first time, she considered going back to the older man, not because she wanted to, but because desperation changes people. Still, something inside her refused. She couldn't do it. She just couldn't. The next morning, Edith began doing small jobs around town, washing clothes, cleaning compounds, carrying loads in the market, anything she could find. Her hands became rough, her body became exhausted, but every small coin mattered, because Kabi needed medicine, and because survival no longer gave her choices. One afternoon, while rushing home before the rain started, Edith passed a football field. Some boys were playing. The ball suddenly rolled toward the road. Without thinking, Edith sprinted after it. Fast, very fast. She kicked it back perfectly. Everyone stopped, including an older man standing near the field, a former school sports coach. He stared at her carefully. Then he said slowly, "Wait, aren't you Edith?" The coach remembered her immediately. The talented girl everyone once talked about, the athlete with unbelievable speed. He asked why she disappeared. Edith tried avoiding the conversation, but eventually, she told him everything. The deaths, the struggle, Kabi, the fear. The coach listened quietly. Then he said something she didn't expect. "You still have talent." Edith almost laughed. Talent? At a time like this? What use was talent against hunger? The coach offered free training, encouragement, support. But Edith refused. Not because she didn't want it, because survival came first. Dreams felt too expensive now. A few days later, while searching through her stepfather's old things, Edith found something hidden carefully beneath clothes inside a drawer. Documents, an envelope, and a handwritten letter. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter began with, "To Edith and Kabi." Immediately, her eyes filled with tears. The stepfather explained everything. He wrote that he knew his family very well. He knew that if anything happened to him, they might try to push the children away. So secretly, he had prepared something: savings, important documents, plans for their education. And at the end of the letter, one sentence broke Edith completely. "You may not carry my blood, but in my heart, you became my children." Edith cried harder than she had cried since the funeral, because for the first time, she realized something. The man truly loved them. That night, Edith sat quietly beside sleeping Kabi. The letter rested in her hands. Outside, the world still felt uncertain. Life was still difficult. Pain was still there. But something inside her had changed. For the first time since the accident, hope returned. Small, fragile, but real. And as she looked at her little brother sleeping peacefully beside her, Edith made a silent promise. No matter how hard life became, she would not give up. Not anymore. But Edith's biggest battle was only beginning. Will the stepfather's family allow them to stay? Will Edith finally return to sports? Or will life test her again in ways she never expected? Edith's journey isn't over yet. Expect the final part, where the truth, the struggle, and her future will finally unfold.